Welcome back to Power Lunch. Off to Cape Town now, where we talk to Spiwe Chireka, an ICT analyst at Frost & Sullivan. Before we get into some of those specifics around Telecom, Altech, as well as Datacentrix, let's get your views in the context of what's happening in the global economy. How do you see that impacting and the environment on ICT players here in South Africa?
Hello, and thanks for having me on your show. I think if we look at Africa, we're not very immune to what's happening elsewhere, but we are in a unique position that as much as the rest of the world is pretty much developed or at a much more advanced stage than we are in a phase of high growth in almost every aspect of ICT, of telecoms, of IT services. So I find that as the rest of the world goes through, phases of uncertainty, there's one thing that's certain in Africa, and that there's lots of growth and lots of investment opportunity here. So we're likely to enjoy that for quite a while.
But how do you read the situation if there is a slowdown? Which ones will be more resilient? Is it the box pushers or the ones that add value to the process?
At this point, I think looking at the African market, it's a 50-50 thing for both ways. We've got some areas where we are still looking for the box pushers, where there's not really much services to add value to, but we also have certain areas of the market where those who are adding value are likely to benefit from that.
Well, you say it's 50-50 on that level. How are you seeing then the spat between Telecom and the Competition Commission? Telecom could be fined close on 4 billion for anti-competitive behavior. Is that also a 50-50 call?
Well, I think it is a 50-50 call, because if we look at the current scenario, I think the biggest problem is that there is an overlap in responsibility, regarding who deals with what in certain vertical sectors, etc. And one thing I would like to state is that I think as South Africa we could learn from, the other African countries, whereby telecoms operators have been left to be dealt with by the telecoms regulator, and the competition authorities and the competition tribunals actually have no say in what happens in the telecom sector. Because sometimes we have scenarios such as these whereby an operator is acting within their license requirements, but it somewhat contradicts certain parts of other acts. So I think there is a strong need to isolate the ICT sector and allow it to manage and regulate itself, rather than having an overlap, which I believe is the cause of this so-called spat between Telecom and the Competition Tribunal.
Sounds like you're siding with Telecom because they contend that this thing should be regulated exclusively by ICT.
Well, not to say that I'm siding with them, but just looking at it from a somewhat objective point of view, there is a problem that needs to be addressed. Whether the ruling holds or whether Telecom still has to pay the fine, that's a different issue. But if we look at the issue at hand, there is an issue that who is actually the person that can fine Telecom, that has the authority to actually say that they must or must not do this.
France had a numbers came out of Datacentrix a couple of days ago. Gross margins have improved smartly in 2008 compared with 2007. I'm sure you've run your eye through those numbers. Anything in particular that caught the eye, and what do you make of the management changes?
Okay, the one thing that caught my eye was that they have basically two major groups of services, and that is the solutions side of things and there is the infrastructure and managed services side of things. And from our calculations, infrastructure and managed services contributed close to 92% of their revenue, and the solutions side only, I suppose it's 8% of it all. And our take is that the nature of the services that they're offering in the solution side of things is quite a challenging arena, both in South Africa and in the African continent as a whole. And by this I'm talking about services such as enterprise resource planning, that's ERP solutions. We're looking at business intelligence, and previous studies that we've recently completed at Frost & Sullivan do identify these areas as they are somewhat growing, but we wouldn't expect growth to go beyond the single-digit figures or even the lower double-digit figures. So
we
it
need
is
to
somewhat
finish off and talk
explained.
about Altec and their push into East Africa. Is it a smart move in your book?
Very smart move, and especially the fact that they started in East Africa, which is one of the booming sectors in terms of telecoms in Africa. They have averages of 60% growth, and yet Africa is sitting on about 40% as a whole. So we believe that it's a very strong move for them, and they've made a perfect area to start and a perfect partner as well in terms of the 3 acquisitions that they've made.
I'll take under pressure so far this year, down 17%. That was Spiwe Chireka, ICT analyst at Frost & Sullivan. That's all from Power Lunch in association with MoneyWeb. We're crossing now to CNBC US for US Squawk Box. CNBC Africa back at 4 p.m. Central African Time with Regional Roundup.